Hey ladies, today is Sunday, February 28th, 2020, 85 weeks postpartum. Not sure why I'm still counting that way, but I still am. And so Michaela is 19 months and I guess 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I don't know. She'll be 20 months on the 8th of March. So I guess 3 weeks, yeah, 18 months and 3 weeks. So that's crazy. It's crazy. Like I feel like I was just saying she was 18 months, she was 19 months, and she just turned these things, and then we're already almost at 20 months, which means we're almost at 2 years old. So yeah. But anyway, just a quick cycle update on my part. So my period came on. I was wondering where it was and worried about having an irregular cycle because I'm still nursing. And it came on Tuesday. So after I recorded a whole video about how my cycle is irregular, it did come on. Um, I think it's still considered a regular cycle because I do think it was late, but not really, really late. Like it was, I listen. I've been tracking with these apps, and I used to use an app before I was pregnant. Um, several years ago at this point, called Flow. And when the Flow app, when it predicted my period would come on, my period came on that day. Like we were in sync. Um, but things have changed since then, and I'm not using Flow because I don't like it as much for tracking ovulation for me, because they want you to subscribe and pay for all these bells and whistles that maybe I do need, but I don't realize I need. But I was just like, I'm just trying to track ovulation. And Flow used to tell me or predict when I would ovulate, but Flow used to also be pretty much free. And now the only thing it would do is track a period where so I haven't been using Flow. Anyway, I've been using the Glow app, and I've been using the Pre-Mom app. And then oddly enough, I upgraded my Fitbit, and I started tracking my menstrual cycle with my Fitbit again. And so now I'm using three apps. I'm using Fitbit because Fitbit will track your menstrual cycle. So the thing is, not talking about the Fitbit because I wasn't using that at the time to track my menstrual cycle, but the other two apps, Glow and Pre-Mom, were predicting that my period would come on the 19th. It did not come on until the 23rd, which I guess isn't super late, but enough time for me to kind of figure, for me to freak out, which I probably shouldn't have, but enough time for me to freak out because I'm just like, well, what's going on? Where is it? Why isn't it, coming on? But it was only a few days late. That does give me like a 35-day cycle or something like that. But whatever. So of course that makes me feel better. I think that everything is working. What I need to do is not like freak out like as soon as things don't seem like, I was relying on these apps to be right. And now I'm realizing like, well, maybe they're not. In my prior experience with Flow, where the apps are always right, I'm kind of like, oh, these apps will be right. But maybe they're not, clearly. And so the funny thing is the Fitbit did not predict my period would come on until the 22nd. So I actually wasn't using that at the time, but if I had just been tracking with that, I wouldn't actually been thinking about, it came on the 23rd, so it's really only one day difference. But what's crazy is that now that my period has come on, all three apps are ridiculously, wildly different on when I will ovulate next and when my next period will come on. So none of them agree anymore. Where before the Flow app and the Pre-Mom app were at least agreeing on the fact that my period would come on the 19th, although they did not agree with on which day I ovulated. Once my period actually came on, the pre-mom app um, did not change when it predicted my past ovulation, but it is now predicting my ovulation for March to be um, March 9th. And then the Glow app is predicting my ovulation will be March 12th. And then the Fitbit app is predicting that my ovulation will be March 15th. So 9th, 12th, or 15th. So that, but so I guess there's a week there, but you have to think like prior to ovulating, you're using your most fertile time of the month, which would be different. If I ovulated on the 9th, then my most fertile time of the month would be starting before that. I think around the 4th of the month of March. So so it would keep moving. So that's like at least 2 weeks or so of trying to nail down a fertile period of ovulation. I do have the strips, and once my period goes off, I'm going to start testing with the strips because this is all over the place. But like I said, the process for me hasn't been 100% foolproof. I hope other people have better experiences. Um, the clear blue, I might just choose to use the clear blue advanced strips because at least they do say, when you get to your high. But I don't know. Right now, as soon as the my period goes off, I'm going to start testing just so I can try to get an idea of when my most fertile period this month actually will be. I'm sure the dates that I gave you, but the apps will change once I start tracking ovulation. The Fitbit app doesn't actually. I mean, you could track ovulation as far as put in whether you took a, a ovulation test and whether it showed you ovulated or not. But unlike the Pre-Mom app and the Glow app, you can't scan it in to get results. But honestly, I don't know how accurate scanning into those apps actually is, which is why it's good to have the Clear Blue Advanced, assuming that's accurate, that because it will just say whether your hormones are low or high, or whether you hit your peak, even though I did not get a peak on it last month. The good thing is, and maybe for peace of mind purposes, I do have a doctor's appointment on the 10th of March. So it falls in that possibly fertile period if I go by, you know, that range of dates, even though if I ovulate on the 9th, the 10th would kind of be around the end of the fertile period. So who knows? But the good thing is that I have a doctor's appointment to get an ultrasound blood work with the reproductive specialist, and I will at least find out then whether I'd already ovulated. So that'll give me an idea, or if it looks like I'm going to ovulate. So that'll give me, she'll be able to see where I am as far as getting closer, whether I ovulated or not. So that's good. And so I will have that information this month. So we'll see. But I don't know how, ladies who test and test, I mean, luckily, or hopefully their period is more regular and their cycle is more regular than mine is showing to be right now. But just relying on these strips and all of that is just weird to me, because they're just all over the place in my experience. And the apps are just very unreliable. So, it's probably best to just do the test if you're going to just do the regular strips, and just eyeball it and go from what you see. If it looks dark, just go by it, because I know with the scanning on the app, for me, it just was all over the place. So, yeah, and given that my period started when it started on the 23rd, I don't know if I ovulated late that month. And so in February, I probably wouldn't even have been testing when I ovulated, or if my period just came on later than it possibly maybe should have by a few days. Anyway, it's not as well, it's funny because it should be a science, but it's kind of like without having an actual doctor tracking all of this for you, it's kind of just, you're doing your best. But in some ways, IVF was actually easier because I did not have to think about any of this. And ovulation was triggered and planned, and everything was planned, and I didn't have to think about it. I mean, that, there's also the injections and stuff. So in that, to that extent, is harder. Um, the retrieval process, but at least at the end of the cycle, assuming that your cycle works out, at the end of the cycle, you get a transfer of embryos, and they may or may not implant, but you do get a transfer. So to that extent, gets you a little closer, and it should because it is invasive. But you're a professional tracking it along the way. Either way, for me, this entire process feels extremely clinical, whether it's going through the IVF process, whether it's tracking ovulation, it all feels very clinical, and not like romantic or anything. But I guess maybe that's overrated. I don't know, but it just feels like very like, okay, this is a medical procedure. More than anything else. But I did, IVF before, and I ended up with a, beautiful little girl. So we'll see what we do this time. I'm trying to try um, naturally, but I only have so much patience for this, and we'll see before I just try to say, okay, let's just jump and do IVF. If not for the pandemic, I would already be doing IVF, but because of the pandemic, I did not want to run to the doctor constantly and risk exposure potentially to just in traveling to the doctor and, going into the public areas constantly to do IVF. But, hopefully, fingers crossed, if I decide to do it, I can do it and stay safe. But that's it. That's my update. So maybe I need to lessons learned for me is to not freak out and realize it's going to work out. So, um, all right, ladies. I will talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to my rant and continue to be safe.